Buongiorno and good morning to all the Italian companies connected today for our second module of the Africa Champion Program. It's a second edition. My name is Gianluca Scialdone, and I'll have the honor and privilege to guide you in today's session. A very interesting session, very different also from the ones we've had so far, but just some general house rules before we kickstart today's module. So as you know, you are able to interact with the chat box, which is located on your upper right corner of your screen. Otherwise, you can also, and very important to know that you can, if you have urgent calls and you have to jump out of today's session, like all of the first module, today's Module 2 will be recorded and available on demand on the SACE Africa Champion Program webpage. So obviously this is an invitation also to rewatch if you've missed one of the 6 sessions that we've had from the Module 1. So having said that, I think it's important to kickstart immediately and dedicate an important moment to our welcome and institutional remarks. So without further ado, I would like to leave the floor to Deputy National Director of the Task Force for Piano Mattei, the Mattei Plan for Africa of the Italian Presidency of the Council of Ministers. Ambassador Artona, the floor is all yours. Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, Gianluca, and thank you to SACE for launching the Africa Champion Program, which has now reached, as you were mentioning, the second edition. And this edition definitely confirms the success of the first, and above all, the strong interest that is being shown by our companies and partners. There's no doubt that we consider Africa Champion Program as an integral part of the Mattei Plan, by providing Italian companies with the skills, knowledge, and tools that they need to know in order to grow and invest in the African continent. Today's module focuses on the relationship between the Mattei Plan and multilateral institutions, and it captures a central dimension of our plan. The Mattei Plan is a national Italian strategy that pursues its objectives through internationalization and the construction of international partnerships based on the clear conviction that its success really depends on the ability to build concrete, structured, and effective collaboration with our international partners. Partnerships with institutions such as the World Bank, the African Development Bank, PADEA, and the Africa Finance Corporation are really essential to scale up our resources, share risks and opportunities, and accelerate the impact of what we do. And I'm very happy today to see many of our friends. I feel at home with many of the people that are participating today, because we really discuss on a day-to-day basis on how to make our projects as effective as possible. With the World Bank, joint work is advancing on the co-financing of energy-related projects across the African continent, including under Mission 300, with around 500 million euros of supporting access to energy initiatives. So it's a very big endeavor that we have been bringing forward since the start of 2025. This year, the partnership is also expanding into the water sector, with several projects in the pipeline in Mattei Plan focus nations. With the African Development Bank, we have created a strategic partnership with Italy from the very beginning. A central pillar of this collaboration is definitely the Mattei Plan Process Financing Facility, Rome Process Finance Facility, which has now reached around 167 million euros, thanks to the contribution of our country, the UAE, and Denmark, with further partners that are expected to join in this facility. Just last week in Washington, Italy and the AFDB group signed a new 140 million euro co-financing agreement, further strengthening our partnership. With the Africa Finance Corporation, cooperation initially focused on the Libido corridor that has progressively evolved into a broader and more structured partnership, including strategic areas such as critical raw materials and strategic infrastructure. In this context, the upcoming AFC roadshow in Italy, scheduled for June, will be a very important opportunity to further engage with the private sector and promote new investment opportunities in Africa. Finally, with Badea, we are developing a new partnership framework, also involving other international organizations such as UNDP, and we are confident that this cooperation will continue to grow, including through closer engagement with Cassa Depositi e Prestiti and SACE. So these partnerships really are not only institutional, they want to create, and they are creating, bridges for our companies, enabling them to collaborate, share expertise, develop joint ventures, and build lasting industrial and financial ecosystems. I sincerely hope that today's sessions will be a productive opportunity to highlight the strategic importance of these partnerships, which we have promoted also for the benefit, I would say in particular, for the benefit of companies, supporting their growth and opening up new business opportunities. I thank you all for your constant collaboration and support. And once again, thank you to SACE for launching this very appropriate Africa Champion program. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for words and remarks on the architecture and all the importance of the Mattei Plan and what it stands for. I would like to leave the floor now and introduce Director General for Africa and Special Projects for International Financial Cooperation from the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Italy, Ms. Francesca Utili. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to you for your invitation, and let me also thank all of today's participants that are showing their interest in the opportunities represented by the African continent. I'm extremely pleased to take part in this event. SACE represents indeed a key pillar within a broad framework of financial institutions and instruments that Italy has activated in support of the objectives of the Mattei Plan, and notably to facilitate and support investment and trade with Africa. Indeed, a defining feature of the Italian plan is its governance, where, under the coordination and steer of the Prime Minister's office, the entire Italian system, as we call it, is mobilized, including SACE, CDP, ICE, CIMES, South Africa, and so on, in order to leverage on national expertise in strategic sectors, foster partnerships between Italian and African companies, promote co-financing opportunities with international institutions, support Italian SMEs in accessing African markets, and strengthen coordination among financial actors to enable effective risk sharing. This diversified architecture has developed across time and is now able to mobilize public, private, national, and multilateral resources according to opportunities and needs. This approach ensures flexibility in an effective dialogue with partners, and this allows the design of financial structure of operation that can maximize business opportunities for all and bring significant local added value. In this context, it is very appropriate to focus on the role that multilateral development banks and international financial institutions can play, and on the partnerships that are ongoing and can be further developed. For the implementation of the Mattei Plan, as we have heard, Italy has strengthened its partnership with several institutions, especially regional institutions, through co-financing agreements, dedicated trust funds, joint project pipelines, and is contributing to several flagship initiatives, some of which have already been mentioned, like Mission 300 and the investment in water. Let me also flag the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa to prepare bankable projects to accelerate the energy transition with a strong private sector involvement with the African Development Bank and Africa 50. And of course, initiatives related to the implementation of the Lobito Corridor, where Italy is partnering with CDP and with Africa Finance Corporation, also already with SACE. We also know that SACE has established cooperation memorandum of understanding already with also with Badea. And why have all these partnership and collaboration being established? Of course, those institutions have deep regional experience, close relationship with regional governments, and the proven ability to pool resources and attract private investment through public-private partnership and the de-risking mechanism. In addition, they can provide specific technical expertise to foster project origination, and scalability of resources towards larger initiatives that can deliver greater impact. So we will soon hear from our colleagues from those institutions that I also take the occasion to thank for their participation, what are the procurement opportunities within those investment activities that can be either through directly managed procurement or through local procurement, which is managed by local authorities in the context of sovereign loans. Let me also stress that across all those institutions, there are significant reforms of the procurement procedures that are ongoing, that have been strongly supported by Italy together with other like-minded countries. And the aim is to increase the weight of merit-based criteria and manage in this way price competition. This is very relevant for Italian companies that can excel with the quality of their activities and of their products. SACE is already collaborating very actively with those institutions, and the partnership that SACE and that in general the whole system of export credit agencies can offer are extremely important and relevant for multilateral development banks and other financial institutions, since they perfectly understand their potential to leverage resources and to involve effectively the business community through the continuous contact and the engagements that they already have. The additional contribution of training programs like this one is very welcome, since it allows to share relevant information to foster the business opportunities and to create the conditions to advance on the ground. So moving forward, I believe that it is essential to continue bringing together all actors, governments, multilateral development bank, public and private financial institutions within a coordinated framework that can really support investment and reduce risk. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edizione. I think you've ended with a correct word also to introduce now Michael Ron in terms of the risk and the business of managing and assessing risk, which is SACE. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michael Ron, our Chief International Officer for SACE. Thank you very much, Michael. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Many thanks and good morning, everyone. It's really, really great to take part in today's session of the African Champion Program, since this is an initiative that lies at the very heart of what SACE has been building over the past years, I would say also many years, and it's particularly fitting that multilateral institutions are today the focus of the session. Going back a little while, SACE's engagement in Africa has been indeed a very significant one in terms of the strategic evolution in our history. Our exposure, SACE's exposure in the continent, has increased from around 2 billion euro in 2015 to over 16 billion euro today, making us currently the third largest ECA in Africa by exposure, following only China and Germany. Since the very launch of the Piano Mattei initiative, SACE has issued over 5 billion euro in guarantees across African markets, facilitating over 18 billion euro in projects including the energy, agribusiness, infrastructure, healthcare and industrial sectors. All of this with around 610 Italian companies involved through 14 business matching initiatives. Now, this growth, which is really an exponential growth, occurred also since we are increasingly working alongside multilateral development banks, DFIs, and platform borrowers who bring local knowledge and help us in upscaling effectively the size of the financing and guarantees at a scale that no one single ECA can replicate alone. And I want to demonstrate to you how it's done through, citing just one transaction that I believe illustrates very well this model in practice. And we're looking at the 250 million euro CDP facility to the African Finance Corporation, AFC, that was backed by a SACE push strategy guarantee. In other words, this is untied finance, which was structured to cultivate Italian supply chain opportunities in infrastructure and renewable energy, including, of course, the Lobito Railway Corridor across Angola, Zambia, and the DRC. So this transaction demonstrates, in my opinion, very clearly how ECAs and DFIs work together and can move together the market beyond a single project, if you want, single project risk, towards scale, continuity, and also regional integration. So the role of blended finance, which is really, the classification of this type of, instrument, together with multilateral institutions in making these transactions possible, cannot be overstated, as they provide the additionality, the credibility, but also the risk-sharing capacity that allows for the private capital to follow. There are many misconceptions, not only preconceptions, misconceptions regarding financing projects in the African continent, but this is like a word of caution, because Africa, in our opinion, is not unbankable. It simply requires a disciplined, a well-structured partnership between ECAs, DFIs, and multilaterals to make projects bankable, scalable, and sustainable. And this is precisely what this program is designed to build. We look at knowledge, we look at relationships, and the confidence, above all, to engage with these institutions in an effective way. So welcome to today's session, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mika. Thank you all for these very important introductory remarks that really set the ground for today's session. As it's very clear, we have the core of today's meeting will be with our guests from the multilateral institutions, but without giving less importance, but to even give and set the ground even more to our next speakers. So in here today in the same room, we have Massimo Schiro as the head of international business for SACE, and we have also connected Giorgio Massotti as head of business partnership and programs for the International Development Cooperation team at the GDP. This allows me, and just very briefly, I'd like to stress this point also to the benefit of the people that are the companies that are listening, also for the other modules that we've had. The purpose, and as specified in all three welcome remarks, is really this Team Italy approach. So allow me to stress that this has been a work that we've done hand in hand with all the institutions, with all the stakeholders involved. So obviously today we have an image of SACE and GDP, but to all the companies that have listened to the module one, or have to on demand can rewatch the different modules. You've seen the Italian Trade Agency and its directors. In the first edition, we've had also SEMES join, where we've had a deep dive together with SEMES and SACE with the suppliers credit scheme. This is just to say that, and the importance of this panel, which is strengthening partnerships between Italy and multilateral institutions. There's also an underlying message, which is also strengthening our partnerships among institutions. So just to say that there's also a nice image of how the Team Italy works together and projects exactly this unity with the common aim of fostering growth and opportunities and awareness, primarily awareness to the Italian companies. So with this premise, just very brief, maybe a bit too long, but Massimo, I leave you the floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe I'd start with what you just said. So it's been a Team Italy involvement as has always been a core market for Italian exporters, therefore also for SACE. A couple of figures that explain the relevance of Africa for Italy. We are currently the third most exposed ECA to Africa, with over 15 billion euro exposure, after China, after Germany. And since the beginning of the Mattei plan, we have issued more than 4 billion euro guarantees for African projects. So actually, I think we have the experience, and possibly we are ECA with the most experience of collaboration with DFIs. So we have tested hands-on how effective this collaboration can be, exactly for the reasons we all know, as this collaboration combines the respective strengths, the strengths of DFIs. Ms. Utli clarified what these strengths are, together with the capacity of ECA to mobilize international financing by providing the risking to international commercial lenders, delivering regulatory capital relief, and enabling long tenors. Recent OECD modernization now allows for ECA financing tenors, which can extend up to 22 years. So it's becoming a very powerful tool, which combined with the capacity of DFIs make financing of strategic projects in Africa much more achievable. And based on our experience, there are two collaborations that we have seen between ECAs and DFIs, where collaboration proved to be very, very effective. One is in connection with our Untied Push program. In this Untied program, SACE guarantees a financing of an international lenders given directly to an African DFI. So the financing is not tied to an export contract. It is not tied to a specific project, but rather it is designed to scale the funding capacity of the DFI, using SACE's guarantee to attract long-term competitive financing, international financing, which is then deployed by the DFI across the multiple projects of its own pipeline. So leveraging the deep local knowledge, the execution capacity, and also the development mandate of the DFIs. In exchange for this, the DFIs collaborate with SACE in organizing matchmaking events connecting Italian exporters with African buyers, so that in a way, the upstream support that we give to the DFI translate into concrete business opportunities. And a couple of very recent examples are the 250 million euro financing Michael just mentioned, granted by CDP to Africa Finance Corporation and guaranteed by SACE, and also a very recent 100 million financing granted by an international commercial lenders to TDB, which has also been used for renewable projects in Western Africa. And both are already bringing visibility and opportunities for Italian exporters. So they are untied in their origin, but then they translate into business opportunity. And then the second area of collaborations is, of course, in relation to typical buyers credit, export credit activity, where SACE as an ECA guarantees a financing to an African buyer. The financing it is used to pay for an export contract. And here we have seen three models of collaboration with DFIs. One is down payment support by regional DFIs. As you know, an ECA like SACE can cover only up to 85% of an export contract. Whenever the DFI finances the remaining 15%, it improves bankability and also accelerates financial close. A second model is parallel financing, which is a model we have seen especially for larger projects like transport or railway projects, where the DFI facility runs alongside the ECA facility, each covering separate lots or separate work packages within the same project. And this is something that has happened, so we have experience on that. Sometimes it happened unintentionally. So we ended up working together on the same project, but there wasn't an upfront coordination. And then the third model, which is the more advanced one, is on the contrary, early coordinated, structured, usually led by an African DFI, a multilateral, that brings together ECAs, commercial lenders, DFIs under one coherent structure. A very recent example is the Addis Ababa airport, where African Development Bank has been appointed as mandated lead arranger. And in our experience, this is the most advanced and effective way of collaborating, because it gives early visibility to SACE, to ECAs, to commercial lenders of opportunities. It allows all players to express and identify their risk appetite. And also, as far as SACE is concerned, it allows to identify the national interest angle, which is necessary to involve ECAs in the export finance field, and also necessary to give time to identify possible suppliers or sub-suppliers in time for the building of the financing structure. So I guess that this is probably the message I wanted to give, that one of the issues PCAs or we as such find in Africa is that there is not always a very strong visibility on opportunities. Early visibility on opportunities for us means having the capacity to identify exporters or national angles to be able to intervene. And so sharing of information and continued alignment with DFIs, whether they are mandated lead arranger or just partner identifying other partners to finance projects, is probably the best way forward. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Massimo. And I mean, you mentioned the DFI, so at this point I'll leave the floor directly to Giorgio Massotti, as we introduced exactly from CDP, so Italy's that DFI. So thank you very much, Mr. Massotti, for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and first and foremost, thank you to Mika, Ron, and all SACE colleagues for having invited the CDP at this session of the Africa Champion Program. It's a pleasure for us to be here. I also extend my regards to Ambassador Ortona, to Director General Francesca Utili, and obviously to all the representatives of World Bank, African Development Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, and Badea that are connected today, and we will hear from them in a few minutes. I'm pleased to contribute to this module on behalf of CDP, especially with the focus on the partnership with the multilateral financial institutions that are active in Africa, and most importantly also on what this partnership means in concrete for Italian companies that are listening to us today. And as mentioned, I will do this from the perspective of CDP in our role as Italy's international development finance institution and key implementing partner of the Mattei plan. As I believe most of you know by now, CDP international development finance operation have scaled up very quickly over the past few years. In just a few years, we have reached already a 5 billion euro global portfolio in international development finance, half of which has been deployed on high impact projects in Africa. And I have to say that many of those projects, and indeed our very first loans, have been deployed in favor of African regional multilateral development banks. Those institutions have proven to be fundamental partners. They have an unmatched knowledge of the local context, an ability to structure high impact projects on the ground, and we are now building a local presence as well in Africa. We have offices in Rabat, in Cairo, in Abidjan. We're planning to open a fourth African office in Nairobi. But at the same time, working with the multilateral development banks remain a fundamental element, and we believe the presence with local offices will help us work even more closely on the ground, even more with those partners. We've also scaled up our direct lending operations together with primary financing partners, World Bank, African Development Banks, and this reflects, I would say, a clear strategic choice of Italy and of CDP. Scale up quickly where the needs are greatest, ensuring robust standards, technical, fiduciary, environmental, social, are embedded in the project cycle. Let's come now to some examples. I will echo my colleagues who have intervened in the welcome remarks, summarizing some of the main pathways of engagement between CDP and multilateral development banks in Africa. I will start with the World Bank. Just last week, we were in Washington at the spring meetings of the World Bank. We were also together with Councillor Ortona, Director Utili, and we had the opportunity to further advance on the partnership with the World Bank. I will mention specifically two sectors, energy and water. Energy was a bit at the center of our action since last year. Italy has joined Mission 300, the initiative led by the World Bank Group, to provide access to Africa, to energy access in Africa to 300 million people. And CDP has followed suit, working on multiple opportunities with the World Bank in various African countries. We expect to also come to finalize the first co-financing very soon. At the same time, also water security is coming out on the agenda. Italy also participates to the World Bank initiative on water forward. And again, we follow suit to this commitment as CDP by starting working with the World Bank on specific projects in the African continent, again, with the aim of closing the first transaction in the next few months. I will now move to African Development Bank, another key partners in our journey. We've worked a lot with our colleagues at African Development Bank, see Daniel connected. We've collaborated on multiple instruments. Ambassador Ortona also mentioned before the Rome Process Mattei Plan Financing Facility. This is really a landmark instrument. Italy has contributed through the Italian Climate Fund 100 million euro between loans and technical assistance grants. And the very important thing I would like to highlight is that African Development Bank has committed also to match the financial contributions on the projects that will be financed through this facility. So again, this is a very important example of how the leverage, the multilateral banks can provide a leverage effect and a scale-up effect to the action of CDP and of Italy. Also, our partnership extends in the African Development Bank with other instruments. I would like to mention specifically GRAF, the Growth and Resilience Platform for Africa. This is a co-investment platform promoted by CDP and African Development Bank that aims at investing up to 750 million euro in funds with the objective to provide equity. Because obviously loans are important, these are fundamentals to scale up projects, but without equity, projects cannot really start. And this is why we are looking at both sides of the equation, both the debt side of the equation and the equity side of the equation with the initiatives like GRAF. We have also Africa Finance Corporation. I think the landmark 250 million euro transaction has been evoked by my colleagues together with SACE, backing by the guarantee of SACE. But we're working with the FC on multiple other opportunities related to the Lobito Corridor region and also beyond. And last but not least, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our partner Baidea. Baidea is also, we'll hear from them, increasingly working with multilateral development banks, increasingly working also with Italy. We also work together with Baidea on identifying opportunities, and we're eager to further reinforce our engagement with this multilateral institution in close coordination with the Mattei Plan Task Force, the Ministry of Economy and Finance, and all other Italian institutions involved. Now, having said that, I will come to what this partnership brings to Italian companies. Behind every project that we co-finance with multilateral development banks, and any project in development finance, I would say, there are obviously opportunities for procurement, for engineering and design, building works, materials and services supplies. This is obviously an important element. It goes in addition to the important positive socioeconomic impact on partner countries, but there are also concrete opportunities the Italian companies can take advantage of, can identify. We are deeply convinced the Italian companies have all the skills and technologies to fully seize these opportunities. And this is why CDP, beyond finance and besides finance, is also very active in raising awareness to Italian companies on the opportunities that will come from these cooperation projects. We use different ways to disseminate these opportunities. Events like the one of today, in partnership with SACE and other partners of Italian system, are very important. But also we have, as most of you know, our business matching platform. This is a dedicated platform that where we host matchmaking events, where we spread and disseminate procurement opportunities. Companies that register on the platform can tailor their profile, can identify their sectors of activity, their interest, and therefore not only they can participate to the matchmaking events that are most relevant, but also can receive personalized alerts on the most important opportunities in terms of procurement that are relevant for their sector. And leveraging this, also this platform, we organize, as I said, matchmaking events. I would like to also mention the event that has been organized last November with Africa Finance Corporation, where the bank has illustrated to Italian companies projects that are managed by the bank, co-financed, financed by the bank, and promoted by local partners. This was a very useful way, we believe, for Italian companies to come and know directly the project opportunities and the tender opportunities that arise from these projects. We are replicating this approach with other banks. We've done recently also something similar with the World Bank, focus on projects that we are co-financing with them, and we are working to replicate, as I said, this approach with all the other multilateral banks we work with. We believe that finance is important, is key, but also technologies, and having, in our case, Italian companies being aware and being able to participate in those opportunities is also very important to really bring the best available technologies to the ground. I will finalize my intervention. We stop here just to thank you very much for this opportunity, and looking forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Massotti. Thank you for these important remarks on the vast amount of activities that you follow as GDP and in different departments. Very useful tools at the availability of Italian companies. And this is also another element of the Africa Champion Program, really to raise awareness on the different things and aspects and activities that all us actors are involved. I also find very interesting that the final aspect, right, that the message that you portrayed, which is obviously it's not just financing, it's not just finance for the purpose of financing, right? But there's always a mandate, there's a purpose for it. And I think this is what is really a common element to all of us at this roundtable. And if also the behind the scene crew will support me, I will like to introduce before asking the first questions in nice layout all four speakers in video, just to give the availability to introduce them all at once. So we have connected from AFC, the Deputy Director and Head of Project Development and Investment of Africa Finance Corporation, Mr. Osoroyi Bobede. Then we have also connected the Director of Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency of the African Development Bank, Mr. Daniel Schorth. We have from the World Bank Group and the IFC, the Business Development Lead for Southern Europe, Mr. Guilherme Perez, and Director of Trade Finance Department, Bank for Economic Development in Africa, Mr. SACE Ndosha. So thank you all. I'm not sure if we have it on screen right now, if we can put all four together for brief regards just in that. Otherwise, I would like to just proceed with the panel and ask the first question. So I'd like to start also with Mr. Bede from AFC. You were cited actually in several of the remarks. You were all cited in different moments. If I also got correctly, one of the remarks was also from the roadshow that you have up and coming, if I understood correctly. But having said that, I'd kindly ask, and this is really the same question for all four of you. If you could briefly introduce, obviously, your institution to the benefit of all the companies that are connected, and explain how your work contributes to the growth and prosperity in the region, of course. So thank you very much, and the floor is all yours.
Okay, good day, everyone. Thank you very much to everyone for giving the opportunity to speak on this very important platform created by SACE, which has been a very important partner for the Africa Finance Corporation, and thanks to other colleagues who have joined as well. Again, I lead the project development team at AFC, where we incubate infrastructure projects. AFC is a multilateral development organization. We provide infrastructure financing solutions to projects on the African continent. We have been in existence for nearly 20 years. We've grown tremendously, and we've taken our perspective is basically financing projects across the infrastructure value chain in core sectors of transport, logistics, renewable energy, essential services like road, bridges, and all of those kinds of things. So, and also industrialization in terms of building manufacturing bases, because we strongly believe that this is a path for growth for the African continent. So beyond being an infrastructure financing solutions bank, we've partnered with a number of institutions like yourselves, the FDB, the Badia, IFC, and Co. in developing and implementing on several projects where we've been able to fund these projects across the value chain. For the AFC, our impact is really on infrastructure, like I mentioned. The focus has always been on infrastructure. We do a bit of trade finance, but for African champions who are becoming, who have basically multiple entry points into and outside of Africa. But more importantly, our focus is really providing debt, equity, and mezzanine across projects, but also incubating those projects from scratch and delivering them at scale. Our role definitely on the continent is really, in practical terms, is converting opportunities and ideas into real-time opportunities for companies. And we believe very strongly that through infrastructure, true development is what you can get for the continent. As you know, many African countries have demonstrated strong economic growth, but this has really not translated into positive development, because it's really an output-led economy, where companies are either exporting raw materials and not getting the benefit of it in country. So we believe that infrastructure provides that gap, that bridge, that helps in converting economic growth into actual prosperity for the African people. And this is our mission, to convert those opportunities into using infrastructure as a key pillar of growth, key pillar of engagement for industrialization, key pillar of growth for many of these African economies to scale. But more importantly, also to mobilize domestic capital, which we know is abundant on the continent. So again, I would say thank you very much, and we hope to continue the engagements with follow-up questions. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for this setting the ground, and keyword that for myself I take away, infrastructure. And going to the next speaker, Mr. Schwartz, I think also from the job title that I mentioned, and another keyword from the energy perspective, right? So I would imagine that might be one of your keywords for your introduction of what AFDB does and how you foster growth and prosperity in the region. So thank you very much, of course, for being here with us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you to SACE for associating the African Development Bank to this important Champions program. Africa has tremendous opportunity, as you know, across all sectors. I think the energy sector indeed is a case in point. Despite, for example, having some of the world's best renewable energy potential, there's only roughly 2% of international investments flowing to the African continent. So there's a big mismatch between the opportunity and the actual investments that are coming to the continent. And that's not really backed by sort of the fundamentals in terms of the situation on the African continent. I think there are some important studies that have been done, including from Moody Analytics, that actually highlighted that infrastructure defaults in Africa were significantly lower than in other regions sort of over a prolonged period of time. So the African Development Bank is Africa's premier financial institution. We have an extensive footprint on the continent. We've been in operation for more than 60 years. With 81 member countries, including all 54 African countries, but also many non-regional member countries. Italy is an important shareholder of the bank, an important contributor to our African Development Fund, which is our concessional financing arm, but also supporting various other facilities at the African Development Bank. And I would really say that over the last 2 years, in the context of the Mattei plan, there has been intensification of the cooperation with Italy, with the various institutions, the ministries, Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, SACE, but also support for various facilities, some of which have been mentioned directly housed at the African Development Bank, such as the Rome process / Mattei plan financing facility that is really focusing, supporting climate-aligned infrastructure in transport, water, and energy on the African continent. The Italy-Africa co-financing agreement, collaboration on the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, that's really trying to provide project development support for sort of large-scale infrastructure projects on the African continent, to just name a few. The bank is a AAA rated institution and obviously is able to borrow on international markets and provide sort of competitive financing to our clients, whether on the public sector side, governments, but also, of course, we're providing financing to the private sector directly as well. So just to give you one figure, Last year in 2025, the bank roughly approved lending of a magnitude of 8 billion units of account. That's almost $11 billion US. Slightly more than 25% last year were actually financing to the private sector through our African Development Bank private sector window. But that's sort of roughly the share in terms of our financing support. The bank's strategy was just adopted 2 years ago on like a 10-year strategy, really focusing on supporting prosperous, resilient, inclusive, and integrated African continent, and sort of scaling particularly investments in key sectors, including energy, agriculture, really kind of moving Africa forward to industrialization, sort of really having more local value creation on the African continent, but also at the same time fostering the regional integration of the African continent as well. So those are some of the key priorities. Through our new president that joined last year, there's a particular emphasis also on seizing Africa's domestic capital, also turning sort of the demographies into really a dividend for the African continent, and of course a continued focus on building resilient infrastructure. And maybe just to give you a little bit more sort of color, sort of looking at energy more specifically, sort of in terms of our priorities when it comes to the energy sector. Key priorities clearly closing the energy access gap on the continent, close to 600 million no access to electricity, almost 1 billion not having access to clean cooking solutions. That's why jointly with the World Bank Group, we launched Mission 300, sort of really a bold effort to provide access to 300 million Africans by 2030. And that requires, of course, the support of all stakeholders. And we're very pleased that Italy has been supporting Mission 300 from the get-go. Second one is obviously to increase the generation capacity. There's, I mentioned, tremendous kind of potential that is largely untapped. So we have a strong focus on renewables, but we're also considering that there is a role for natural gas. And there's another kind of key focus in the energy sector, which is on sort of the regional integration dimension, financing the critical interconnections, also now increasingly looking at how to bring in private sector financing, for example, in the sector of transmission. Yeah, I think I'll talk maybe later a little bit more about how sort of the collaboration opportunities are with the Italian private sector.
Perfect.
But maybe I'll stop here in the interest of time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very useful, very on point as well. So you mentioned as well another institution that we have the pleasure of having here today with us. So we have Guillermo Perez as the business development lead for Southern Europe for IFC in the World Bank Group. So thank you for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. We're glad to be here. I'm actually glad to see lots of colleagues, which we collaborate on a daily basis, right? Not only the MEF, CDP, SACE, so very happy being here. So as far as IFC goes, as you know, we're part of the World Bank Group. And nowadays we're seeing solutions we provide to companies, in particular here speaking about solutions we can provide to Italian companies as an integrated package, right? So not only IFC alone, but more and more so jointly with IBRDI as part of the group. That's a thing that is a strategic shift for us over the last couple of years, and it's been applied very well with Italian corporates so far. So basically, IFC a little bit different from some other institutions here in the table. We are a global institution, meaning that we don't particularly focus on a region. And I think that's actually the biggest or the largest added value for companies that are truly global or have multiple region activities, which is to leverage and to tap into the World Bank Group's positioning across the globe. We have offices pretty much everywhere where we can offer beyond the usual financing package and advisory services that most supranationals offer, but also local expertise, local knowledge, and more importantly, because of the global presence of the World Bank Group, knowledge exchange. So actually, added value is really even also with the creation of the knowledge bank in the World Bank exchanges. So we know what works in certain markets, certain regions, and we can bring that, including innovative aspects, to operations and clients in other regions, right? So that's one of the key advantages of IFC as opposed to regional banks or development institutions. So we've been working increasingly more and more in Italy nowadays. I'm actually based in Rome. We are under an expansion in southern Europe in particular, with Italy and the overall framework of the Sistema Paese and the Mattei plan being a driver of a push to do more with Italian corporates abroad. In fact, we're increasing our team here. The local presence is growing. And we've grown also significantly the capacity to originate transactions in the volume of transactions originated with Italian corporates. What we're focusing more now in the next 2 years is increase a little bit the collaboration and the framework of collaboration that we have with partners, sister institutions, right? So here again, I mentioned the CDP and SACE that we've been the pleasure to talk more strategically recently. So we can actually develop things together and co-create solutions for Italian corporates where sometimes IFC might have things we're not particularly good at and the other institution the same, so we complement each other. That goes beyond just co-financing, but also strategic stakes, right? So I'll talk a little bit more. I'm cognizant of time, but I'll talk a little bit more for the participants on what IFC can offer. So on the financing side, we do pretty much all the products that commercial banks do, right? So long-term financing, local currency financing. In some cases, we can use blended finance as well, depending on the geography. We can also do treasury solutions. We can also do any sort of use of proceeds as long as it's in emerging markets. So that entails working capital, capex, even acquisitions, and somewhat refinancing depending on the project. And the more important part for added value, like I mentioned before, is really entry into new markets or expansion into markets where companies are considering to go. Nowadays in Italy, especially because of the Mattei plan in geographies in Africa, where companies might perceive a lot of risk, not only financial, operational, even country risk in a sense, where we can help, right? Where we can use the dialogue that we have with governments to support, find solutions, right? We've seen a couple clients in Italy actually having difficulties with currency transferability, right? In Africa, that's a big thing for us. And we're more and more trying to help them out in this sense to enable investment there. And in fact, these companies see a lot of potential in Africa. They see growth. They have good margins there, but this particular angle is difficult for them. So we can help like that as well. What I think also it's important to phrase here is that IFC maybe to clarify to the companies here that IFC does not necessarily work only with large companies, with very large companies, right? We can also cater for medium-sized companies, especially in geographies which are more difficult. We can do smaller ticket sizes, and we can sometimes even bring blended finance as needed. So this is a message to the participants here that we're more than welcome to receive, proposals. We're more than open to discuss without any commitment projects or expansions that you might have in mind, and take it from there, right? So very glad to be here again, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Guilherme, for that, and thank you. Just to conclude the first part of the roundtable, we'll have also Mr. SACE in the shower from the Director of Trade Finance Department of the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. So, Mr. SACE, also for you the same question. If you could give us a bit of a an explanation and a description on your institution and how it contributes to growth and prosperity in the region, of course, with a regional focus in this sense as well.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you having me in this panel, this important panel. Yeah, I think it's a pleasure to briefly introduce BADIA, the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. BADIA is an international financial institution. It's a multilateral development bank, similar to my previous speakers. Established 50 years ago to strengthen economic, financial, and technical cooperation between Arab countries and African nations. Our mandate is to support sustainable development across the African continent by financing strategic infrastructure, productive sector, and by providing technical assistance on and capacity building, of course. So our work contributes directly to growth and prosperity in the region by addressing some of Africa's most critical development gaps. Through long-term financing for infrastructure such as transport, energy, water, and digital connectivity, we help lay the foundations for private sector growth and regional integration. At the same time, of course, we support agriculture, industry, and SMEs, recognizing the central role in job creation, value addition, and inclusive growth increasingly. BADIA also places strong emphasis on climate resilience, food security, and sustainable economy, ensuring that economic progress is also inclusive. BADIA covers 44 sub-Saharan African countries, and BADIA is the rating is just one notch below AAA. We have a AA plus rated rating from Moody's and then Standard & Poor's. It's a very well capital supported bank. The shareholders are the 18 Arab countries. They're based in Riyadh. We have 3 windows in BADIA that where we are operational. That is, one is a public sector, the public window. Then we have a private sector window and a trade finance window. Recently, BADIA board approves close to 20 billion for the next 5 years. 2025 is already gone. Now we have 4 years until end of 2029. That is the exact number is $18.75 billion. That means closely $4 billion every year we have to deploy. We have to support the 44 sub-Saharan African countries. So I think having said that, maybe I will come up with what opportunities and then other possibilities, investors or suppliers or corporates, how they are working with BADIA. I will come up on that point.
Right.
I think.
Thank you.
I want to be precise. Thank you.
Absolutely, and also on the focus on the figures to give us a bit an idea on the magnitude of what your multilateral development institutions move in terms of financing. Very quickly, and also this is just a second round for all of you, so we'll start also from Mr. Mattei. Today's audience, as you know, is largely composed of Italian companies, which are both SMEs and larger firms. Some already, most I would say, have experience in African markets. Some might be just joining the whole Africa Champion program to understand the opportunities, right? To get that sense of awareness and opportunities and also of the risk factors. So to gain new insights. So I'd like to ask to each one of you, what opportunities can your institutions offer to Italian companies, and what would be your key message to them? Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And again, I think very important question. So we have, again, executed projects working with a number of Italian companies. I see a lot of knowledge base from Italy, especially in the infrastructure space. We've had companies like Team Engineering work with us on projects, metro projects, where they are bonus engineer today for our projects, which we're delivering in Kinshasa, for example. We've engaged with a number of companies, the SMEs, who want to provide ballast, but also provide those company equipment and supply those equipment. We've worked with the likes of Interfair, and Technital in several other projects. So essentially, we see one big area of engagement is really the knowledge base that Italian companies bring to the table on the African continent, especially across the infrastructure space. But more importantly is also the execution and the resilient spirit of the Italian people in doing business in Africa. Whilst we can point to the various opportunities on the continent, they are also quite challenging and take a long time to implement these projects. So you need partners who are taking a long-term approach, a very resilient approach, and what we can afford those companies is beyond the balance sheet for execution, beyond providing debt, beyond providing equity or being partners, but it's also that long-term partnership that allows for long-term growth and taking a long-term view for execution. Most of the other, the approach also within any sector, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in infrastructure, for example, the Lobito projects, which we're working on, there are EPC opportunities. There are going to be operations opportunities to operate those rail lines. There are going to be supply opportunities for all kinds of services and goods to support the rail line. But again, on those projects, you also have beyond the opportunity for EPCs, but also companies that can take a value chain approach. Because if the focus is on SMEs and large-scale institutions, forming long-term partnerships with local entities where you are able to transfer knowledge, but also develop the partnerships that can be multi-generational. We've seen that sort of platform work. We know a number of Italian companies that have been on the continent for many years, especially on the upstream oil and gas space on the African continent, for example, and they've basically been there for over 50, 60 years. So it's, again, deepening that partnership. But more practically, as I said earlier, it's taking a long-term view, a value chain approach, and bringing a lot of the knowledge and learning, because Africa is at that inflection point where growth in infrastructure is happening at scale, and what is missing is execution capacity. Financing is available from the multilateral banks that you've seen. SACE has been gracious with CDP to support projects like Lobito projects, working with AFC. There's also engagement with the Africa ACP, which is our Africa Capital Partners, where SACE and CDP are also making investment into that fund. So the funding is there through multiple sources. I think what we miss, the bigger impact is execution. And we think Italian companies have that resilience, have that long-term view to be able to forge those partnerships. So we'll remain available, not as a strong implementation partner on the continent, to deploy through your projects, to deploy capital, but more importantly, to execute on these projects, because this is what is required for long-term and true growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. No, very, very important, very nice keywords also, and also in this remark. So for sustainable growth, you need to have that resilience capacity. My takeaway as well from your remarks, if you agree, of course, this transfer of awareness in terms of a company needs to have, yes, the willingness to be in the markets, but also the capacity, right? So I think the focus of formats like this and other occasions is really to raise the awareness, to understand if one is capable and willing to preside these markets. So same question, of course, back to you, Mr. Short from AFDB.
Yes, thank you very much. And just to echo some of the comments raised by the previous speaker, indeed, there's a lot of expertise available in Italy that is already and can even more benefit the African continent. And there are numerous opportunities for Italian companies to intervene. Let me just highlight sort of two segments. One is obviously working with the African Development Bank directly, so where there's a direct financing need from a company. For example, if it's a large company, one could look at providing sort of a corporate financing sort of to help with expansion plans. If it's an Italian company that's an experienced developer, for example, of an independent power producer project, there's obviously the potential for project finance where we can sort of deploy our financing products and in some instances also able to bring in addition to our long-term debt, blended finance through some of the facilities housed at the African Development Bank and climate finance that we can access. And we have the ability to provide long-term financing, so generally a tenor of 15 up to 15 years. But in some instances, particularly for IPP projects, for example, we've gone to up to 20 years in terms of tenor. For smaller companies, there are also opportunities, including working through various kind of intermediaries, specialized PE, private equity, or debt funds that we've created over the years. For example, recently, together with the International Finance Corporation, we created Project Safiri, which is basically a platform to provide equity into companies sort of in the decentralized renewable energy space across the African continent. So just one of the examples sort of funds and facilities that we have set up. The other part obviously is opportunities sort of to come in terms of providing services, goods, works for projects financed by the African Development Bank, where basically either sort of our clients, the countries, or the bank itself sort of launches procurement processes. And that's really an opportunity for Italian companies to do more. I just looked ahead of this session just at our procurement statistics, which are available online. And Italy represents roughly 0.5% of the total AFDB sort of procurement on an annual basis. So there is significant scope for increasing that share. And I think Francesco Tilli sort of highlighted also some of the reforms that are ongoing at the moment, sort of to place more emphasis sort of on life cycle costs, for example. What we have seen, so just in the statistics, and I don't know if this is already an early effect of the Mattei plan, sort of a slight uptick, particularly in 2025 compared to previous years. Obviously, our procurement policies, the requests for expressions of interest, the requests for proposals, consultancy assignments, etc., they're all available online. They are all published. It's important for companies that are interested in these opportunities sort of to look at those publications, to engage early on in dialogue. And there are clearly a number of recommendations that sort of have sort of come out of sort of experience with bank procurement processes. Obviously, strong technical content is critically important, but also compliance and sort of clear alignment with the requirements of the calls for proposals are very often the deciding factors. So it's critically important of course, sort of to tailor the proposal to specific requests for proposals, but also ensure that all the compliance requirements are exactly met, sort of in line with the requirements in the tender process. Obviously, a lot more could be said, but maybe let me stop there in the interest of time. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think that's very, very important also to dive into some figures and remarks. I think it goes hand in hand with what was previously mentioned in terms of the AFC. So it's also nice to see this similarities in comments, obviously for different institutions, but how exactly it's a sort of a solution-based analysis that are very similar amongst all of the comments that you're raising. So I'll leave the floor to Guilherme from IFC. Mr. Perez, the floor is all yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think I touched a bit before in my intro, right? But here I'll expand a little bit more. So much like our colleague from AFDP described, right? The package from IFC in terms of financing is not different from the other regional banks or supranational institutions in the sense that we can do traditional finance. But I wanted to highlight here the more important part for us nowadays, which is, as I mentioned before, knowledge exchange between regions. This takes the form imbued with local expertise in the form of takes the form of advisory services, which is a work stream that we're developing more and more. And also something I didn't mention before, which is the upstream angle, which today is also part of the global advisory services from IFC, which is project development, right? So we're also inviting companies that don't have necessarily an immediate financing need or an immediate project or plan of expansion in a particular geography to also get in touch with us, because we do work, especially on the infra space in feasibility studies, right? We have provided grants for that as well. And we can also advise, as the product name says, on project development itself, right? Including, if needed, taking expertise from home, as we say it. So sometimes we also make the link between companies in Italy, right? Companies in Italy that are looking at expansion in a particular geography, and we have our network of, let's say, engineering firms and environmental and social standards consultancies that have global expertise as well beyond IFCs, and we make that linkage, and sometimes projects come out of that. So that's another interesting angle. I would say another piece of the puzzle that maybe I didn't explore too much back there is our cross-sector approach, right? So we don't necessarily focus on a particular industry or sector, right? So the work we've been doing in Italy is actually cross-sector, right? So not only infrastructure is a big part of our portfolio, but we're also focusing more and more with global initiatives in the World Bank Group, such as AgriConnect, in the agri space, right? We also have, as part of new corporate priorities, a huge focus on health and education. So this is something also that we want to explore with Italian companies that are in this sector. We have specialized products and solutions for those companies, also to venture into new markets where oftentimes opportunities are good. And part of our job is also, when in contact, to bring to them what we've been seeing in terms of expansion of other companies cross-regional, for them also to get a sense of opportunities out there, right? Another thing I think I failed to mention last time is oftentimes we get we get questions from Italian companies on whether or not we could do beyond financing acquisitions, M&A, also facilitate joint ventures, right? This is especially important for a sector that is very strong historically in Italy, the manufacturing sector, right? Where sometimes you want to evolve from a purely export-driven business in some emerging market to actually having production there, right? And oftentimes they seek us out in the sense of, can you actually link us with potential partners there that we could form joint ventures with and actually leverage their local expertise? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. We have nowadays even a new initiative in the group called Private Sector Lab, where we foster actually joint ventures. This is very active nowadays, also in innovative technologies, right, including AI and ICT in general, telecom. But generally speaking, in the medical sciences field as well. But generally speaking, we can do that for any company, right? We've historically done that a lot on the infra space through SPV financing with different sponsors being mandated lead arrangers. However, we're doing more and more now with smaller clients, right? So this is also something that it's a flagship for us. A final point from my side. Sorry, did I run out of time?
Please.
Yes, just wanted to mention our capabilities also in local currency financing, which is something that is sought after by Italian corporates. And we've been getting more and more, potentially good offers in local currency basis and with more currencies, especially now in Africa, much needed. So that's another thing that we can offer companies beyond just the traditional hard currency financing. So I'll stop here. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you. I think very important. Last element that you mentioned goes hand in hand a bit probably with what you mentioned in terms of not only the financing aspect, but also the knowledge base and the understanding the different criteria. So I'd also like to leave the floor to Badea for this final remark on the other opportunities. So Mr. SACE, the floor is all yours.
Thank you once again. Turning to opportunities for Italian companies, I think for me the message is very clear. There is strong alignment between Africa's development needs and Italy's industrial strengths. So the Italian firms, both SMEs and then large companies, can engage directly through Badea financed projects. In sectors such as infrastructure, renewable energy, and agribusiness, water management, and industrial development, which I mentioned earlier. These are the areas where Italian technology design and then know-how are highly competitive and well regarded. Beyond project participation, Badea acts as a gateway and risk mitigating partner. We could help creating reliable frameworks for investment, support partnerships with local African firms, and encourage long-term engagement rather than one-off transactions. I think the local partnerships are essential not only to succeed commercially, but also to ensure sustainable and local impact. I think my key message is simple here. Africa is not just a market. It's not just a market of the future, but it is a market of today. Or in other words, I would say that Africa is not just a continent of potential. It is a continent of concrete opportunity today. So with the right partners, patience, and understanding of local contexts, I think Italian companies can grow their business while making a real contribution to Africa's development. I think Badea, from our side, Badea stands ready to work with you to turn opportunities into concrete bankable projects. Let me give you some flavors or some examples. As I mentioned, I think my SACE colleague Ron Michael said it very well. It's what is for the developed countries like Italy, the most important thing in Africa, what they are looking is risk. Always we are talking about risks. So I think as DFI, my colleagues DFI colleagues here, they can agree with me. As a development bank, we are there where the market failure is there. So we have to, because that's why our mandate. And Badia is, as I said, taking the 44 sub-Saharan African countries risk. Why 44 countries? Because Badia is not I would say the Arab League member countries are not beneficiaries, or our shareholders are not beneficiaries. That is the fine thing in Badia, what we have it, because the conflict of interest is not there. The beneficiaries are the non-member countries, the sub-Saharan 44 countries. So with Badia's rating, AA+ rating from Moody's and Standard & Poor's with stable outlook, so the Italian companies, they can utilize Badia. We are there. We are taking that risk. We support, which you are a big fear there on the risk. So Badia is covering you, and then we can work together. As I said, we have country limit. Within that country limit, we are doing, for instance, with SACE, we are working on one project, for instance, under Mattei program. One is the Koisha hydroelectric power in Ethiopia. So still in the discussion, but we have a good, because after we signed our MOU, I believe last year, beginning of last year, during the Italian Prime Minister visit in Saudi Arabia. So we are moving a little bit on that way, that we can support. But there are a lot of opportunities coming with your Riyadh office in SACE. We are working really very closely. Luckily, also our office is just 50 meters far each other. So we are happy to support. So the only thing is, my message is, we are there to support, to help. Just use us, and then that is a simple message to all of you. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, words of optimism and sort of very strong pragmatism. Also, in terms of our functions, of our mandates, I think that was a bit of a red line throughout today's session. It was very So we have it screen all four of the multilateral banks. So thank you very much. I would actually like also to ask the direction of today's webinar. If you can also add on screen, we have exactly with Francesca Utili, also Michael Ron, and also Giorgio Massotti, just to thank you all for representing on the institutional level and the importance that you describe for the Italian companies. Just a word of advice to the Italian companies, the ones that were not able to start the session. So obviously the ones that dropped out already heard this at the beginning. They'll be able to rewatch today's session live on demand from the platform. For the company that are connected right now, you can rewatch the beginning should you have missed it. Next week, we will conclude the Africa Champion Program, the second edition, with a focus on critical materials and digital innovation. We will have also Confindustria Africa together with the other partners, primarily also the Ministry of Italian Made in Italy, MIMIT. So this is once again to showcase the full Team Italy approach from the start to the finish of the Africa Champion Program. So, but focusing on today's session, I'd like to really thank all of our guests for the availability, for the important words and remarks that allow the Italian companies connected really to have them added. Right, this is not more than an end point, it's a starting point of raising awareness, and definitely to the conversation to be continued. Primarily bilaterally with Italian companies that have the opportunities and directly with the institutions. Just a technical words and more of something related to SACE, to the Italian companies that are connected. The invitation that we always stress at the end of each webinar is obviously to get in contact with your relationship manager, primarily to the ones that are focused in Africa. Be aware that in terms of the supplier's credit product, that there is a gratuity in terms of the preliminary risk assessment that is put on the portal. So that is free at the moment for the markets which are in target with the focus on this format. So once again, the invitation is always to get in contact with your relationship manager and resolve any questions that you have with them. So thank you very much to all the Italian companies that were with us connected. Thank you all to the speakers. for a very interesting, stimulating session. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a pleasant day ahead. Thank you.